Hey everybody, it's Big Mike, your home for progressive news issues and candidates here in Colorado. I am with David Seligman today. David is running for Attorney General. He is a worker and consumer rights attorney. So let's jump right in. David, introduce yourself and tell the people why you're running.
What's up? Hey, Big Mike, how are you? It's good to be here. So, my name is David Seligman. I'm a workers' rights, consumer rights lawyer, running for Attorney General because I think it's absolutely essential that we fight back against the forces of corruption and corporate abuse that are squeezing us all dry, making life less safe, less free, less prosperous. That does involve fighting back absolutely against Donald Trump and Trumpism and against the corruption that surrounds him, but also fundamentally fighting back against the conditions that gave rise to Donald Trump, which is an economy that's rigged against us and in favor of the top 1%. Very often, that rigged economy takes the form of corporate lawlessness, abuses by the billionaire class and corporate powers. And I think it's absolutely essential that we get somebody into the Attorney General's office that can has the experience taking on the biggest fights against the biggest corporations in the world boldly and courageously, because that's what we're going to need going forward.
Gotcha. And I do want to come back to your work in labor and consumer rights. But obviously, the big story right now is ICE.
Yeah.
Um, as Attorney General, what powers would you have to rein in the federal government here in Colorado?
Thanks for the question. Something that I've been talking a lot about on the campaign for months, been saying it's absolutely essential that the state of Colorado hold ICE officers accountable when they violate state law. And that's something that the Attorney General can do. I announced last week that if elected, I would create an ICE accountability unit. That unit would be charged with a couple of things. One, holding accountable ICE officers when they violate the law. That includes potentially criminal and civil liability for violating our constitutional rights, for engaging in, assault and battery, God forbid, for murdering someone here in Colorado. It's very important for us to remember that federal law protects ICE officers and makes them immune only when they're operating within the course of their duties, right? Only when they're engaging in work that is necessary and proper to their duties as an ICE officer. When they're not, when they're trampling our rights, when they're engaging in excessive force, when they're doing those kinds of things, when they're acting corruptly, they are just dudes with masks and guns, and Colorado law applies. The Attorney General can apply it. That's absolutely essential. That's something I'm committed to doing as Attorney General. It's not just that, though. It's also we got to fight back against the billionaires that are profiting off of this outrageous immigration detention industrial complex. That includes the Geo Group, the private immigration detention company that operates right here in Colorado, including that owns the detention facility in Aurora, Colorado, and Palantir. Palantir, the wealthiest corporation in Colorado, is making billions and billions building out the largest AI surveillance system in the history of the world. In service of Donald Trump and Stephen Miller's immigration enforcement agenda. We need to hold those private contractors accountable too when they violate the rights of Coloradans. And then another, I think, really critical role for the Attorney General's office is, and this is something that I've already been doing in my work as the executive director of Towards Justice, is that we hold accountable state officials when they try to collaborate with ICE. We see far too much of that. Governor Polis tried to turn over information from the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment to ICE, and we stopped him. It violated Colorado law that prohibits that kind of collaboration. I'm really worried about those kinds of collaborations across the state, whether it be whether it be local or county sheriff's offices or police departments. I mean, fundamentally, we are living in a world right now, as I think many of your listeners know, where folks out there across our communities are terrified in far too many communities, terrified to, call 911, terrified to report their boss for wage theft, terrified to complain to their landlord if their landlord doesn't maintain safe living conditions, because they are concerned that ICE is going to become involved. That kind of even the suggestion of that kind of collaboration is outrageously dangerous for Colorado. So that's something else that the Attorney General can do under its pattern and practice authorities, hold accountable even state and local officials that do the bidding, that try to collaborate and support Donald Trump and Stephen Miller's immigration enforcement project.
Sure, and I think you had mentioned, are you suing Governor Polis for his attempt to turn over information to ICE? I believe I
Yes.
saw.
Yes, yes. So,
Can you tell us about that case?
yeah, so we learned last year, thanks to a whistleblower, Scott Moss, within the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, we learned that the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment was intending, uh, pursuant to, it seems, the governor's request, to comply with a subpoena from ICE to turn over personal identifying information about people in Colorado held by the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. That kind of collaboration with ICE's civil enforcement efforts, right? This was not a court-ordered subpoena. This is a piece of paper produced by ICE, seemingly in support of immigration enforcement efforts. And that kind of collaboration directly contradicts state law, which prohibits the sharing of personal identifying information with ICE for really good reason, because our policymakers in Colorado have identified that that kind of collaboration with ICE makes all of us less safe. It is an absurd threat to all of our safety. And so, and that's, we were very concerned that Governor Polis was attempting to share information in violation of that law. And so we obtained a preliminary injunction. That case is still ongoing, but we obtained a preliminary injunction to prevent him from doing so.
That's awesome. Big applause on that. You also mentioned the surveillance state with Palantir. We've seen Mike Johnston kind of go around city council to extend the contract with flock cameras in the city. What, as Attorney General, could you do to, make sure that that information that they are just, collecting in reams isn't going to ICE?
Thanks for the question, Big Mike. Can I call you Mike? Big Mike? I don't know what to, you know.
Your preference.
All
Mike's
right,
fine.
Mike, Big Mike, Michael. How do you pronounce your last name?
Francine.
Francine.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll call you Big Mike. All right, Mr. Big Mike. Whatever. If I'm trying to be respectful. All right. All right. So, Mr. Big Mike. Appreciate the question. I'm really concerned about the proliferation of cameras across Colorado. I mean, we're talking about the growth of a surveillance state unlike anything that we've seen before. This license plate reader technology is really advanced. It's taking millions, gathering millions and millions and millions of data points about where we're going, tracking if we go to a protest, if we go to church, right? Where we work, when we take our kids to school, all kinds of things. We ought to be able, I should say, we ought to be able to do law enforcement without engaging in surveillance at that scale. I do think there's some really important guardrails that the attorney general can help to police um, that I'd be really interested in policing. First, how do we need to aggressively enforce our laws prohibiting the sharing of information with ICE, not just and that has to happen both with respect to what information is captured for license plate reader technology on behalf of cities or police departments, but then who has access and what happens when that enters a centralized database. It's really important that we police that. The attorney general can. It's not just sharing information with ICE. Our shield laws here in Colorado, which protect providers and others from out-of-state efforts to go after people who are seeking abortion care in Colorado. Those laws are really essential, and I'm deeply concerned about how flock can be used, and we've seen evidence of this, how flock can be used, for example, by out-of-state law enforcement trying to investigate or even prosecute people coming to Colorado to seek an abortion here where it's legal. That's something that I'm really concerned about. That's something that the Attorney General can help to enforce. In addition, I'm really concerned just generally about and I think we all should be about the sort of convergence, the marriage of government and big tech, and what that means for our data, what that means for our privacy. I think over the next 10 years, attorneys general offices will be absolutely essential, and this is would be one of my key priorities to police and enforce our consumer protection, our privacy laws, the laws that we can use to hold big tech accountable, including the private companies that are using all of this surveillance data about us. And whether that's Flock itself or whether that's other companies that are using license plate reader technology, whether it's, HOAs, our bosses, whatever it may be. Increasingly we're seeing like an expanded surveillance state, and that's not only a problem when it comes to law enforcement, it's also a problem when it comes to private industry.
Gotcha. So I do want to get back again. You are a worker and consumer rights attorney. That is huge. I am a union member myself. I work construction 50, 60 hours a week and do this on the side. So tell us a little bit about your work in the labor and consumer rights and why you think that's so important.
Yeah. So, I saw from very early on, as in my life, but as a lawyer too, how the law was rigged in favor of those with wealth and power, who too often get away with trampling our rights. Like corporations, millionaires right now, are hijacking our politics. They are boiling our oceans, and they're ripping us off as customers and workers, and they're getting away with it all the time. So, I moved back home to Colorado more than a decade ago. Have been a workers' rights, consumer rights, anti-monopoly lawyer, and the executive director of Towards Justice, a nonprofit legal organization here in Colorado, that fights for working people against corporate abuse in Colorado and across the country. I'm representing tens of thousands of Amazon delivery drivers right now who allege they're forced to urinate in bottles in order to stay on task, in order to meet the quotas of one of the wealthiest corporations in the history of the world. We're fighting for, nurses trapped in their jobs with the contracts that look like modern day indentured servitude, where if they leave their job early, they have to pay back tens of thousands of dollars. Fighting for veterans trapped by non-compete agreements. I'm standing up for tens of thousands of people across Colorado who, maybe some of your listeners, um, rent from a big corporate landlord called Graystar, but we're standing up for tens of thousands of people across Colorado, who are buried in junk fees of like $100 a month sometimes to the largest corporate landlords. We do a lot of work on behalf of people who are like drowning in medical debt. We've got hundreds of thousands of people drowning in medical debt right now in Colorado, to billion-dollar hospital systems like UC Health. The bottom line is that, we see this this as I said earlier, this rigged economy where, the 1% seem like they can get away with everything, and the rest of us get like screwed at every turn. Very often, that the scam involves like violations of law with and of our hard fought laws, our worker protection laws, our civil rights laws, our consumer protection laws, our antitrust laws. And I've dedicated my career to fighting back boldly, and forcing the biggest corporations in the world to follow the law. So we've recovered like almost $100 million stolen from working people, and forced the biggest companies in the world to follow the law.
Good. A current Attorney General Phil Weiser, obviously running for governor against Michael Bennett. In your opinion, has he done enough? He's done some really good things, in my opinion. We saw the rent algorithm lawsuit.
Yep.
He stopped the merger of Kroger and Albertsons. Has he done enough? And would you consider yourself a continuation, a change of direction, or an intensification of his policies?
I like the way you put intensification there. Certainly, when it comes to holding corporate power accountable, I think that Attorney General Weiser has taken some really important steps in that regard. You named some of my favorite cases of his. I'm also litigating alongside his office in have been litigating alongside his office in the junk fee case against Graystar. Um, I think that there is a lot more to do, and I would do everything I can to scale the resources of that office in order to take on even more of these fights, and even more essential ones. I mean, look, like the stakes are absurdly high, right? Like, I just want to use the example of Amazon right now for, it's just one, but there's a million data points out there like this, right? So we've got, one of the wealthiest corporations in the history of the world, Jeff Bezos, standing behind Donald Trump at the inauguration. This company is built on a business model that appears to be totally lawless, right? So their delivery drivers, for example, the people I'm fighting for, that are driving all across Colorado, and delivering packages, and under these absurd kinds of pressures, because Amazon has structured itself to make sure that, like, you can get your $5 sunglasses in 12 hours or whatever. So it's going to put the people there doing it through absolutely hell to make that happen. Um, and the Amazon says that the people that are delivering those packages to you don't even work for Amazon. So that when
Right.
Amazon, so when they try to unionize, Amazon can just cut the contract. Now, that's like on its face, that's freaking absurd. And typically, we could rely on the National Labor Relations Board, or hopefully we could rely on the National Labor Relations Board to try to police that conduct. But we can't now because they're being dismantled. So we
Right.
need the Attorney General's office to step in and to pursue those cases, even more of them, and to pursue them boldly, to take some shots. It doesn't mean that we're going to win every single one, but we've got to take big shots, because the stakes are absurdly high. So I think that building on Attorney General Weiser's efforts, expanding the resources of the office, using all the tools we can to leverage those resources to do even more of that work, is absolutely essential.
All right. And we saw Polis veto the Worker Protection Act last year. Democrats in the legislature have already vowed to, basically get it right back on his desk. Is there anything the Attorney General can do to help in that function, or is that kind of limited?
Well, look, um, there's, as I like to say, you're not just electing a lawyer, you're electing a leader. I think it's absolutely essential that we elect an attorney general who can get out there and loudly and proudly proclaim, that the governor should sign the Worker Protection Act. That's critical to our prosperity and freedom here in Colorado, and it's absurd that Governor Polis vetoed it, especially right now when we're seeing these absurd concentrations of wealth and the proliferation of autocracy. Um, and so I would not be afraid, and in fact, I think would eagerly use my bully pulpit to speak out, on those issues. And then, of course, just broadly, as I mentioned earlier, the Attorney General has an immensely important power, to go after the corporate scams that are designed to bust unions, and we see that all the time, right? So we've got 6.7% private sector union density in the state, only, or somewhere between 6 and 7. Only that means that like 7%, whatever, of private sector workers have the benefits of a union. That's totally outrageous. This is the freaking the silver bullet to the middle class and for our democracy. And as Attorney General, I would do everything I can to prioritize going after the corporate structures that are meant to deny people the opportunity to join a union, because I think that's an existential fight for us right now.
Yeah, and just a little bit about my background. I was a victim of this current system.
Really?
At my previous job, I tried to start a union there, and we had 50%, but we did not have 75%.
Is that
So the
right?
union we were organizing through wouldn't even bring us to that first election because we didn't have that 75%.
What kind of
Um,
like what kind of stupid ass process is that? It's totally absurd. I mean, the second election, the suggestion that we hear from our politicians sometimes, that like the second election is like the Colorado way. That's like saying like corporate greed and union busting is the Colorado way. It's ridiculous, right? Just because we've been doing it this way doesn't mean that we ought to continue doing it this way, especially now. And one of the most striking problems we have here in Colorado is absurd amounts of inequality.
yeah, and to hear Governor Polis say, "Oh well, we have to get an agreement from the
Yeah.
businesses." Well, they hold all the cards. So what incentive do they have right now to reach any kind of agreement?
Uh, um, legislation it is the consequence of politics. It's not about like this isn't about like task forces. It's not about having policies that corporate interests are going to agree with. That's not like the point of legislation. The point of legislation is to make people's lives better. We know how to do it. As I said before, one of the most important silver bullets that we have in the history of this country, is a union. So let's just get it done. It's absolutely bananas to me. So um, I appreciate you advocating on that issue. And let me say too, for your listeners out there, let's make this issue a massive one in the Democratic Party primaries this year. Every legislative seat. every state house, every statewide race, the governor's race, the AG's race, the treasurer's race, the secretary of state's race, every single one. Let's make sure that we are getting all of our candidates on record being specific about how they're going to fight for the working class and making sure that they're willing to take those fights boldly and courageously, and on this issue in particular, where they come out on the Worker Protection Act.
Gotcha. And then one more thing I wanted to touch on before we get to a couple of sticky questions. I saw one of your videos on public access for riverbeds and for waters in
Oh,
Colorado.
yeah, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what that means. As an avid hiker myself, I think it's very important. I don't know if you're familiar with this lady on TikTok who's obsessed with her backyard. She goes by like the Wicked Witch of the West or something. But how important is it for Coloradans to have the rights that people have in every other state to access these waters?
Yeah, it's essential. So, Big Mike, let me give you a little bit of context here. So, the Supreme Court has concluded now. This is like clear for a century or more that the riverbeds of rivers that were navigable at statehood are belong to the public for the public's access, for rafters to float along, for anglers to wade through. That they belong to the people of Colorado. And the vast majority of Western states provide that kind of access. Colorado doesn't. And it's for no other reason than that billionaire landowners have tried to make this issue like a muddy and complicated one. And it's just shouldn't be that complicated. It should not be that complicated, right? Like we're not saying that people can take the water from the river. Well, we're not even saying that people are allowed, and they're not, right, to walk through people's properties on land in order to access riverbeds. But what we are saying is that anglers and rafters and others wading through and floating along the rivers can do so without being threatened with being sued or prosecuted or even shot. It's totally absurd. And that's the status quo that we're living in Colorado. I love this issue. I love this issue because I think it's an absolutely essential one. But I also love this issue because I think it's a perfect example of why I'm running for Attorney General, because I'm sort of sick and tired of these pretty straightforward challenges becoming harder than they should be because of the force of money in our politics. And so I said, as I said in that video, you should expect me. There's some things that are, hard because they're complicated, and there's some things that are hard because they require a lot of courage. I'm doing this because, like, I want to exercise the courage to take on those big fights, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to pick that one.
Gotcha. One of the tools in fighting against Donald Trump and his fascist organization has been redistricting, as we've seen in California. There's a push to do it here in Colorado. Where do you stand on that? And would the Attorney General have a say in any of that?
I think it's a no-brainer. I think we have to. I think we absolutely have to. Like the stakes are just too high for us to pretend that this is business as usual. And so, yes, I absolutely support those efforts. I don't think, and I don't know if you have, I know others have as well, but it's hard to see how we can get that on the ballot here in Colorado. And maybe, we could have done it earlier, but it's hard to see how we can resolve that issue this year. But for 2028, we absolutely should be able to, and I would support those efforts. Now, that's obviously going to be that will be a fight that will be and a question that's going to be presented to the people of Colorado fundamentally. And as a candidate for Attorney General and as Attorney General, I would be an outspoken supporter of that kind of effort. In the same way that I'm an outspoken supporter of efforts to get money, corporate money out of politics and dark money out of politics by supporting the Montana plan, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but would prevent corporations from investing in politics here in Colorado. I hope to see that pass this spring. But fundamentally, we're going to need to do everything we can in Colorado to get money of our politics to create a level playing field to make sure that, that we're not, putting ourselves at a disadvantage as Donald Trump and his, corrupt autocrats, seize greater control of our government.
Actually, I think that's the first time I reached out to you was about that Montana
Oh, is
lawsuit.
that right? Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool, cool. It's all
So if you
it's
could,
really important.
just for our viewers, could you give a brief description of what Montana is arguing in that case?
Yeah, so Montana. And folks in Montana, that's why it's called the Montana Plan. Hopefully, we can call it the Montana and Colorado Plan. Um, but Citizens United says, as you know, it says that corporations um, have the rights of people and therefore have the right to spend however much they want to on our politics. And that has created this proliferation of dark money that has further distorted our politics in all kinds of outrageous ways, as you know. Citizens United is one of the most, I think, corrosive forces in our society right now. Um, so, um, but what we have to remember is that ultimately corporations are just creatures of state law. They are created by state law, and the states decide what sort of authorities they have. And so, if when you create a corporate entity, the state code can limit that entity's authority to spend on politics. That's different from saying that a corporation that has the powers of a person can't spend on politics, which would violate Citizens United. And so that's what there are proposals on the table to do here in Colorado. I support them. Will it be a fight? It will absolutely be a fight. Do I know what the Supreme Court will ultimately say about that? I don't know for sure, but all we can do is pass laws that comply with the framework that the Supreme Court has articulated for us, and fight like hell to make them real in people's lives.
All right, and we got about 5 minutes left.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
So obviously with the situation in Gaza, multiple experts have called it a genocide. As a progressive channel, we're looking to see do our where our representatives are at. Do you see what's happening in Gaza as a genocide? And would you support ending weapons to Israel?
Yeah. Look, yes, I mean, I do. I have read a lot about the origins of the term of the legal framework of genocide, which were created by one of my many legal heroes, Raphael Lemkin, who was a Jewish international human rights lawyer who I look up to a lot, and read a lot about like how he wanted to frame this understanding and fought to frame an understanding of the term genocide that spoke to the oppression of the oppression and destruction and the horrors that we're seeing, that we saw and are seeing in Gaza. And so I do think that the Israeli government and Netanyahu have been engaged in all kinds of war crimes, and including genocide. I think that it's absolutely essential that they are held accountable for that. And I do support, and I've said and been public in supporting the an arms embargo that would reduce that would cut off the sale of arms to Israel that have been used to engage in really like horrific, inhumane destruction in Gaza. I mean, the use of bombs, as you may know, the use of bombs that aren't even designed and should never have been used in urban warfare, causing outrageous amounts of pain and suffering. Outrageous amounts of pain and suffering. So I'm really deeply uh, I mean heartbroken. I've been heartbroken for years about what's been happening in Israel and in Palestine. Not just the what happened in Gaza after October 7th, but the ongoing occupation of the West Bank is just heartbreaking and a tragedy, and something that I think that we need to be responding to collectively. I'll say too, it is really important to me that we fight for a future where every single person, Jewish and Arab, that lives between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River, right? There are 7 million Jews, 7 million Arabs who live between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River, that all of them, every single one of them, deserves peace, safety, and the right to self-determination. All of them. And I think we need to fight for that together. And our politics too often is not up to that task. This isn't just like a, I'll say this is not just a hashtag issue for me. This is like a deeply personal one. And I just am, invested in helping to fight for a better and more responsible politics here that helps us to helps us to fight for a future where folks in Israel and in Palestine can find the opportunity for peace, safety, as I said, peace, safety, and self-determination for every single person.
Gotcha. One more question on that front. Here in Colorado is one of the states with anti-BDS laws, so anti-boycott, divestment sanctions on Israel. Um, do you view those as an infringement on Coloradans' freedom of speech, and would you enforce those as Attorney General?
That's a good question. I do not support anti I do not support anti-BDS laws, and I'll say that I don't know a ton about what's on the books here in Colorado, so I should look into that. I don't support anti-BDS laws. I think that fundamentally, um, one of the most important things, and one of the things that one of my most important responsibilities as Attorney General will be to protect everyone's right, of course, to like speak out however they want to on all kinds of issues, including and especially speaking out across about injustice across the world, whether or not I agree with them. And that's something that I'm committed to doing. As a general matter, I do not support anti-BDS laws, but I'll be honest with you, I don't know a ton about what we have in the books here in Colorado.
Gotcha. All right. And my final question, this is a new one I'm going to be asking everybody. This is a progressive channel. I'm trying to move the party to the left. I want you to make your best argument that you are the most progressive candidate in this race.
Oh, interesting. Look, I think fundamentally what it means, and maybe goes to what does it mean to be progressive right now, right? Fundamentally, I think the core of what um, it means to be a progressive now, right? Is to see that one of the most essential challenges, like an existential challenge right now, is to fight for the power, the opportunity, and the voice of the working class, right? We are, and Democrats have not done nearly enough of a good job of that for far too long. That's what gave rise to Donald Trump right now. That's what it means for me right now to be a progressive, is to loudly and proudly fight for the future of a multiracial working class that has been screwed over for far too long. And this office can be an essential part of that fight, by making sure that all of us, no matter what part of the state you live in, you're a small, farmer getting crushed by monopolies, you're a parent worried about how big tech is manipulating your kids' brains. You're an Amazon worker, or you work on the floor at JBS cutting meat for some of the biggest monopolists and powerful corporations in the world, right? That we need to make sure that we put the law on your side. That's why I'm running for Attorney General. I think that's what makes me a makes me the progressive champion in this race for the working class.
Awesome. All right. And let the people know where to find you, where they can donate, where they can volunteer.
You can go to seligman4ag.com.
Awesome.
Up
And
there.
this is Big Mike. You can support my channel on Patreon. And thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks so much, Big Mike.
Thank you, sir.